Jake Miller floated through the empty corridors of the research station with a heavy heart and nobody to share it with, or so he believed until everything changed in ways he could never imagine. The deep space facility orbited a distant moon far from Earth and far from anyone who might understand the loneliness that consumed him day after day, and the silence pressed against his skull like a physical weight, making him talk to himself, just to hear a human voice echo through the metal halls. Had been alone for 6 months now since the rest of the crew returned home on the last supply ship, and he volunteered to stay behind to finish the geological surveys that nobody else wanted to complete, because the pay was good, and he had nothing waiting for him back on Earth anyway. Jake spent his evenings in the observation deck staring at the stars and speaking his thoughts aloud to the emptiness around him, talking about his regrets and his fears, and the girl he should have married before. She moved on with someone else who was actually present in her life. He did not know that every word was being heard and understood and filed away in a mind that found his loneliness both fascinating and heartbreaking. The alien woman had been watching him for weeks now from her ship that remained cloaked just beyond the station sensors because her people had strict rules about first contact, and she was breaking every single one of them by being here at all. Her name was something that human vocal cords could never pronounce, but she thought of herself as Luna when she listened to him talk about Earth and moons and the way light reflected off water. She had technology that translated his language in real time and sensors that picked up every whispered confession he made to the stars, and she found herself drawn to this lonely human in ways that confused her scientific training. Luna had studied humans from a distance for years as part of her role as a cultural observer. But Jake was different from the others because he was so beautifully broken and honest in his isolation. She made her decision on a Tuesday night when Jake sat in the observation deck crying silently while telling the stars about his sister who died when he was young and how he blamed himself for not being there. The rules no longer mattered because some connections transcend protocol and bureaucracy. Luna deactivated her ship cloak and sent a docking request that made every alarm on the station scream to life, and Jake jumped from his seat with his heart pounding as he ran to the control room. The scanner showed a vessel unlike anything in human databases, with elegant curves and a hull that seemed to shimmer between solid and transparent. His hands shook as he opened the communication channel, expecting a threat or a demand. But instead he heard a voice that sounded like music wrapped in starlight. She asked permission to come aboard and explained that she meant no harm, and Jake stood, frozen, because this was impossible and wonderful and terrifying all at once. He granted permission because curiosity outweighed fear, and because some part of him had been waiting his whole life for something impossible to happen. The airlock cycled, and Jake waited in the corridor with a wrench in his hand just in case, though he had no idea what good it would do against advanced alien technology. The door opened and Luna stepped through, and Jake forgot how to breathe. She was humanoid, but not human, with skin that held the faint glow of bioluminescence and eyes that contained entire galaxies and features that were both familiar and utterly alien. She wore no suit because her biology adapted to different atmospheres, and she smiled at him with an expression that needed no translation. Luna spoke, and her voice came through a small device on her collar that transformed her language into his, and she said the words that would change everything. She told him that she had been listening, and that she heard every word he spoke to the emptiness, and that he was never truly alone. Jake dropped the wrench and it clanged against the metal floor, and he asked her why and how, and when Luna explained her mission and her fascination and her growing inability to simply observe without reaching out, and she admitted that she broke laws that could cost her everything. She told him that humans were considered primitive by the standards of the galactic community, but that primitive did not mean worthless, and that his capacity for emotion and honesty moved her in ways that centuries of cold logic never could. Jake laughed, and it came out slightly hysterical, because an alien woman was standing in his station telling him that she fell for him by listening to his sad monologues. Luna stepped closer and asked if she could stay for a while and learn more about him and about humans, and Jake said yes without hesitation, because loneliness makes you brave in strange ways. They spent days talking and sharing stories about their worlds and their lives, and Luna showed him images of her home planet with cities that grew like crystals and oceans that sang at dawn. Jake taught her about Earth customs and showed her pictures of forests and beaches in the small town where he grew up, and Luna absorbed everything with the enthusiasm of someone discovering wonder for the first time. She explained that her people had evolved beyond physical touch as a primary form of connection, but she was curious about human customs and asked if she could try. Jake took her hand and her skin felt warm and electric, and she gasped at the sensation because her people had forgotten how powerful simple contact could be. Luna began to understand why humans built their entire civilization around connection and community. She told him stories about the galaxy, and the thousands of species that lived among the stars, and the political structures that kept peace, and the rebels who fought against conformity. Jake realized that his loneliness was not unique to humans, but was a universal experience that even advanced beings struggled with. Luna admitted that she had been lonely too, in different ways, because knowledge without connection felt empty, and her people praised detachment as enlightenment. They formed something that had no name in either of their languages but felt like friendship, and maybe something deeper. The supply ship was scheduled to arrive in 2 weeks, and Jake would have to explain the unauthorized vessel docked. To his station, Luna offered to leave before then to protect him. But Jake refused, because some things matter more than rules. She smiled and said that he was braver than he believed, and that his willingness to be vulnerable was not weakness but strength. They made plans for her to meet the incoming crew, and to begin the first official contact between humanity and her civilization. Luna promised to advocate for Earth, and to help humans join the galactic community as equals rather than subjects. Jake realized that his isolation had led to the most important discovery in human history. The alien woman who heard everything had given him purpose and connection, and hope. She taught him that the universe was vast but never truly empty, because someone somewhere was always listening, and sometimes, if you were very lucky, they listened with compassion and decided to reach back.